There's something your doctor checks at every single appointment and dismisses in under 5 seconds, not because they don't care, but because nobody trained them to see what's actually hiding inside those two numbers. And what they're missing could be the difference between living independently in your own home or sitting in a facility while someone else ties your shoes. I'm Dr. Alex Thompson. I've spent over 20 years as a cardiologist, and I've held the hands of patients who did everything right, took their medications, kept their appointments, followed every instruction, and still lost their memory, their mobility, their ability to recognize the faces they loved most. Not from neglect, from a gap in understanding that nobody ever filled. Here's what happens at your appointment. The cuff tightens. The machine beeps. Your doctor glances at the screen. 142/79. Not bad. And just like that, the moment passes. But those two numbers, they're not just a reading. They're a transmission. Your body is actively broadcasting 6 distinct warnings about what's happening right now inside your arteries, your kidneys, your heart, your brain. And the tragedy is that every single clue is already there, already measurable, already free. No expensive imaging, no specialist referral, just two numbers that almost nobody is reading correctly. Your doctor isn't calculating the gap between those numbers, the one that reveals whether your arteries have quietly turned to stone. They're not checking both arms, even though a meaningful difference between them can signal a stroke waiting to happen. They're not tracking the pattern over time that whispers your kidneys are losing this fight. It's all there. It has always been there. And it keeps getting missed. By the time this video ends, you'll know exactly what those 6 warnings look like and how to find them in readings you can take yourself at home today. Warning number 1 has nothing to do with whether your pressure is high or low. Warning number 3 will make you genuinely angry when you understand how preventable most kidney damage really is. And warning number 6 requires one immediate action, because if you have it and don't catch it, there won't be a warning number 7. This is not about fear. This is about finally understanding what your body has been trying to tell you. Martin was 74 years old, retired aerospace engineer. The kind of man who rebuilt vintage car engines on weekends just to keep his mind sharp, meticulous, disciplined, proud of his precision. His blood pressure had been sitting at 158/62 for nearly 3 years. 3 years of appointments, 3 years of prescription adjustments. His doctors kept chasing that top number like it was the only thing on the page. We need to bring that 158 down. First one medication, then a second, then a third. The number barely moved. But here's what nobody stopped to calculate. 158 minus 62. That gap is 96 points. That single number 96 was a 4-alarm warning that his cardiovascular system was in serious trouble. And for 3 years, not one person in a white coat did that subtraction. Here's what it means. When you're young, your arteries behave like new rubber tubing, flexible, responsive, alive. They expand under pressure and recoil smoothly between beats, keeping blood flow steady and controlled. A healthy gap between your top and bottom numbers runs somewhere between 40 and 50 points. But Martin's arteries had lost that quality entirely. Years of silent damage had made them rigid, calcified, unyielding. When his heart contracted, blood slammed into those stiff walls and pressure spiked sharply upward. Between beats, with nothing elastic to maintain the recoil, pressure collapsed. That's what created a gap of 96 points. And with every single heartbeat, that pressure wave was driving like a piston directly into his brain. He felt completely fine. No dizziness, no headaches, nothing, until one morning he was in his garage, reaching for a wrench, and his left hand simply stopped working. He tried to call out to his wife. The words wouldn't form. She found him leaning against the workbench, eyes wide and confused, mouth moving without sound. Massive stroke. Permanent damage to his speech and left side motor function. His engineering mind remained. His daughter told me quietly, "He understands everything. He just can't tell us anymore." That stroke was entirely preventable. The warning was written in his chart for 3 years. Your pulse pressure top number minus bottom number should stay below 60. Over 70 is dangerous. Over 80 is critical. Over 90 means act today, not next week. A study in the journal Hypertension tracking more than 5,000 adults over 65 found that pulse pressure above 70 doubled stroke risk. Above 80, it tripled. This calculation takes 4 seconds. It costs nothing, and it isn't in the standard protocol. Which brings us to warning number 2. And this one directly contradicts everything you've been told about blood pressure. The medical conversation about blood pressure has one obsession: the top number. Lower it, medicate it, control it at all costs. And yes, a high systolic matters. But in 20 years of cardiology, I've watched something equally devastating go completely unnoticed, a bottom number that has dropped too far. Nobody warns you about that. Nobody's watching for it. And that silence is costing people their lives. Barbara was 78 years old. Retired librarian. Sharp. Independent. Deeply devoted to her Tuesday morning book club and the rose garden she'd been cultivating for 30 years. She'd been managing her blood pressure with medication for over a decade. Dutiful, consistent, never missed a dose. When she came to me, she was on 3 medications. Her most recent reading was 148/54. Her previous physician had seemed satisfied. "Your bottom number looks excellent," he told her. I looked at that 54 and felt immediate concern. Here's the biology most people never learn. Your diastolic pressure, the bottom number, represents what's happening in your arteries between heartbeats during the resting phase. And that resting phase is the precise window when blood flows into your coronary arteries, the vessels responsible for delivering oxygen directly to your heart muscle. Think of it this way. Your heart works constantly, every second of every day. The only moment it receives its own blood supply is during that brief pause between contractions. If the pressure during that pause is too low, flow slows. Your heart muscle begins quietly starving for oxygen. No chest pain. No warning. Just slow, invisible damage accumulating day after day. We call it silent ischemia, and it is exactly as serious as it sounds. Barbara had been living with a diastolic of 54 for nearly 4 years. 4 years of her heart operating on insufficient oxygen. She felt reasonable some fatigue, occasional breathlessness she'd attributed to age, until one evening she collapsed in her kitchen. Massive heart attack. When we performed emergency catheterization, her coronary arteries showed only moderate narrowing, the kind that typically wouldn't trigger a cardiac event. But 4 years of chronically low diastolic pressure had pushed her heart to the absolute edge. Even modest blockage was enough to collapse the system entirely. She survived, but her heart function is permanently reduced. Her rose garden goes largely untended now. The fatigue makes it impossible. A landmark analysis in the Journal of the American College of Cardiology, examining over 11,000 patients, found that diastolic pressure below 60 increased heart attack risk by 49%. Below 50, risk more than doubled. Here's the cruel irony. When physicians prescribe multiple blood pressure medications to drive down a high systolic, they inevitably lower the diastolic as well. The top number improves on paper. Meanwhile, the bottom quietly crosses into dangerous territory, and because no one is watching it carefully, the damage goes undetected. If you're on 2 or more blood pressure medications, and your diastolic consistently reads below 60, that conversation with your doctor cannot wait. Now, warning number 3, and this one is going to make you angry. Walter was, for over a decade, his blood pressure had been textbook 122/76 on a single daily medication. Stable, predictable, controlled. Then, without any change in his diet, his lifestyle, or his prescription, something shifted. Over roughly 10 weeks, his numbers began climbing. 138/88, then 156/94, then 169/101. His doctor increased the dosage. The pressure dipped briefly, then climbed right back. A second medication was added. Same result. A third. Still climbing. 178/108. The diagnosis written in his chart: resistant hypertension. More pills were prescribed. A fourth. A fifth. The pressure kept rising as though the medications weren't even there. But here's the question nobody stopped to ask. Why did this start? Walter's blood pressure had been perfectly controlled for over a decade. Same medication, same dose, same man. Then suddenly, nothing worked. That's not resistant hypertension. That's a distress signal. That's your body broadcasting an emergency on a frequency nobody was tuned in to receive. In Walter's case, his kidneys were the ones sending the message. Each kidney receives blood through its own dedicated renal artery. Like any artery in the body, these can narrow over time as cholesterol plaques accumulate along the walls. When that narrowing becomes significant, the kidney detects reduced blood flow and misinterprets it as a body-wide crisis. So it activates its emergency response. It releases renin and angiotensin, powerful hormones that constrict blood vessels system-wide and instruct the kidneys to aggressively retain salt and water. The biological goal is to raise pressure and restore flow to the kidney. The problem: the narrowing is still there. The kidney never gets the signal it's waiting for, so it keeps releasing hormones. Pressure climbs higher. The higher pressure damages kidney tissue further. Damaged kidneys release even more hormone. The cycle accelerates, and every additional medication addresses only the symptom while the underlying cause continues its destruction unchallenged. 7 months passed before anyone ordered a renal artery ultrasound. By then, Walter's right kidney had already atrophied, shrunken, scarred, largely non-functional. His left kidney was compensating under enormous strain. A simple procedure performed months earlier could have opened those arteries and preserved his kidney function. That window had closed. Walter now faces a future of progressive renal decline and likely dialysis. 3 sessions a week, 4 hours each. His independence measured out in clinic appointments. Research indicates that renal artery stenosis accounts for 10 to 20% of resistant hypertension cases. It remains dramatically underdiagnosed, not because it's difficult to detect, but because physicians default to adding another prescription rather than asking the more important question. Kidney arteries aren't the only culprit. Adrenal tumors can flood the body with pressure-spiking hormones. Severe sleep apnea, where breathing stops repeatedly through the night, creates vascular surges that gradually reset your entire cardiovascular baseline upward. The principle is the same across all of them. Sudden, uncontrollable blood pressure is never just a medication problem. It is a symptom demanding a diagnosis. Before warning number 4, I want to pause for one moment. If what you've learned so far has surprised you, if you're realizing that your own blood pressure readings contain information nobody has ever walked you through, please share this with someone you care about. A spouse, a sibling, a friend managing their pressure on 3 medications without understanding why. This information belongs to them too. Now, warning number 4. And this one is going to connect 2 conditions that most people never imagine are related. What your blood pressure does while you sleep is quietly revealing whether diabetes is already destroying your body without a single symptom you can feel. Here's fundamental biology that almost nobody explains. During sleep, your blood pressure should naturally decline by 10 to 20%. Cardiologists call this nocturnal dipping. It's your cardiovascular system's essential recovery window, the nightly maintenance cycle that keeps your heart, brain, and kidneys from accumulating damage. Without it, those organs work under sustained pressure around the clock, every single night, with no relief. Some people don't dip. Their nighttime pressure holds steady, or climbs even higher than their daytime readings. This pattern, called reverse dipping, is among the strongest predictors of stroke and accelerated organ damage we have in clinical cardiology. Eleanor was 73, retired financial analyst. Methodical about her health, logged her blood pressure every morning and evening without exception. Her numbers looked perfectly reasonable. Morning, 126/79. Evening, 130/83. Her physician was satisfied. Eleanor was not. She was exhausted despite sleeping 8 hours. She woke 3 to 4 times nightly to urinate. She felt worse at dawn than at midnight. Her doctor suggested an overactive bladder. I wasn't convinced. The symptom cluster: persistent fatigue, nighttime urination, morning exhaustion pointed somewhere else entirely. I ordered a 24-hour ambulatory blood pressure monitor, a device that records readings every 20 minutes, including during sleep. Her daytime readings confirmed what her home logs showed. But at night, her pressure surged to 162/96, significantly higher than during the day. Standard diabetes screening showed nothing alarming. Fasting glucose was normal. A1C was borderline, but I placed a continuous glucose monitor on her for 2 weeks, tracking her blood sugar every 5 minutes through the night. The truth emerged immediately. While Eleanor slept, her blood sugar was spiking past 190. Nocturnal hyperglycemia, diabetes that only surfaces after dark, invisible to every conventional screening tool. The mechanism is direct. Elevated nighttime blood sugar forces the kidneys into overdrive, continuously filtering and excreting excess glucose. That's what was pulling Eleanor out of sleep, repeatedly. Simultaneously, high blood sugar activates the sympathetic nervous system, triggering a sustained stress response that keeps blood pressure elevated precisely when it should be falling. Her body never got its recovery window. Night after night, her heart and brain absorbed pressure that should have been relieved by sleep. We addressed the nocturnal blood sugar. Within 3 weeks, her pressure normalized overnight. The bathroom trips stopped. Her energy returned. She described feeling, for the first time in years, genuinely rested. The warning had been there every night. No one had looked. Research is unambiguous. People who fail to dip properly at night carry 3 times the stroke risk of those who do. 3 times. And the only way to know whether you're dipping is to measure pressure when you're actually asleep. If you wake repeatedly to urinate. If you feel inexplicably exhausted despite adequate sleep. If your mornings feel harder than your evenings, these are not simply the inconveniences of aging. These are your body's overnight distress signals. Ask your doctor about 2-4-hour ambulatory monitoring. What it reveals may change everything. Now, warning number 5. This one determines whether you keep your mind intact or begin losing it piece by piece. When your blood pressure swings dramatically from day to day, silent strokes are actively destroying your brain right now. Without a single warning you can feel. There's a widespread assumption that a good blood pressure reading means the same number every time. That consistency equals health. But that's not quite right. Healthy blood pressure moves rising with exertion, settling during rest, responding fluidly to the demands of your day. That natural rhythm is normal. It's biological intelligence at work. What is not normal is chaos. 112/68 on Monday morning. 188/104 by Monday afternoon. 119/71 on Tuesday. 179/97 on Wednesday. These aren't the gentle fluctuations of a responsive cardiovascular system. This is blood pressure variability, and the research on what it does to the human brain is deeply alarming. Frank was 76 years old. Retired civil engineer. Methodical, precise, deeply numbers-oriented. He tracked his blood pressure 3 times daily, in a color-coded spreadsheet going back 4 years. He came to me not because he felt unwell, but because his own data disturbed him. The swings were violent and unpredictable. 104/66 one morning, 194/112 the following day. His previous physicians had spent 2 years adjusting medications. Nothing produced stability. The numbers kept lurching between extremes as though the prescriptions weren't registering at all. What we ultimately identified was autonomic dysfunction, a breakdown in the nervous system's ability to regulate blood pressure automatically. When Frank stood up from a chair, his pressure dropped sharply. His body, interpreting this as an emergency, flooded his system with adrenaline and overcorrected violently upward. After meals, blood redirected toward digestion. Pressure fell. The same overreaction followed. His regulatory system had lost all capacity for smooth, proportional response, and his brain was paying the price in ways he couldn't yet perceive. A landmark study published in Circulation tracked 5,500 individuals across 25 years. Those with significant blood pressure variability carried a 46% higher risk of developing dementia independent of their average pressure level. The mechanism is direct and brutal. Each violent swing stresses the brain's smallest blood vessels. They micro-rupture. They leak. They produce silent strokes, pinpoint areas of dead tissue scattered throughout the brain, accumulating invisibly over months and years. You feel nothing. There is no headache, no sudden weakness, no recognizable event. Just a quiet, incremental erasure. Within 14 months of his first appointment, Frank began forgetting, misplacing objects, losing the thread mid-sentence, repeating himself in the same conversation without awareness. At 18 months, his wife was finishing his sentences for him. His MRI revealed extensive white matter damage, hundreds of microscopic old strokes distributed throughout his brain, each one a consequence of pressure hammering upward and collapsing downward, over and over, year after year. Could earlier intervention have changed his outcome? If we had identified the variability and focused on stabilization rather than simply reduction, possibly. But the damage accumulated silently, and by the time the pattern was recognized, significant losses were already permanent. Here is how you identify dangerous variability in yourself. Take your blood pressure at consistent times each morning for 2 weeks. Track the top number daily. Variation exceeding 20 points is concerning. Exceeding 30 points requires prompt medical evaluation. The causes are treatable autonomic dysfunction, sleep apnea, medication timing errors, unmanaged anxiety, chronic dehydration, but only if someone looks for them. Your brain cannot wait for a convenient appointment, which brings us to warning number 6. The most urgent warning in this entire conversation. The one that requires you to take action before this day is over. A blood pressure difference between your two arms is a sign of advanced vascular disease, the kind that can kill you without a moment's notice. Right now, there is a check that takes 90 seconds and could save your life that almost nobody performs. Most people pick one arm, usually their dominant side, and use it exclusively for every reading every morning for years, decades sometimes. It feels consistent. It feels responsible. But that single-arm habit may be concealing a catastrophe. A difference of more than 10 points between your arms is not a calibration quirk. It is not the cuff fitting slightly differently. It is a clinical warning sign that demands immediate attention. Sylvia was 75 years old. Retired nurse, someone who understood health monitoring better than most. For 11 years, she had checked her blood pressure faithfully each morning on her right arm. Her readings were reassuring. 122/76. Stable, consistent, unremarkable. She felt perfectly well. No dizziness, no chest discomfort, no neurological symptoms of any kind. At a routine appointment, her new physician covering while her regular doctor was away did something Sylvia's chart showed had never been documented before. He checked both arms simultaneously. Right arm, 124/77. Left arm, 180, 3/109. A difference of 59 points. He didn't adjust her chart and schedule a follow-up. He picked up the phone and arranged same-day vascular imaging. What the ultrasound and subsequent CT angiography revealed was staggering. Sylvia's left subclavian artery, the vessel supplying her left arm, was blocked at 88%. Her body had been generating extraordinary pressure simply to push blood through that nearly sealed passage. But the subclavian artery was not the primary concern. The imaging revealed that the same systemic atherosclerosis had advanced into her carotid artery, the principal vessel delivering blood to her brain. It was 82% occluded. A plaque that size, in that location, can rupture without warning. The resulting clot travels directly into brain tissue. The stroke that follows can eliminate speech, movement, memory, or end a life entirely in minutes. Sylvia had been living with this for an unknown number of years. No pain, no warning, no symptom she could have named. Her right arm readings had looked fine every single morning. The disease was hiding in the arm she never checked. Here is the medical reality behind an interarm difference. Significant obstruction in one arm almost never exists in isolation. Atherosclerosis is a systemic disease. When it has all you quit, it has advanced enough to meaningfully restrict flow to a limb. It has virtually always affected other arterial territories simultaneously. The brain, the kidneys, the coronary arteries, the legs. A difference between arms does not mean one problem in one vessel. It means the disease has spread throughout your vascular system. A study published in The Lancet analyzing more than 28,000 patients found that an interarm difference of 15 points or greater was associated with a 60% increase in cardiovascular mortality, significantly elevated stroke risk, and substantially higher rates of peripheral vascular disease, including cases requiring amputation. Sylvia underwent carotid endarterectomy. Surgeons opened the artery in her neck, cleared the obstruction, and restored full blood flow to her brain. The procedure carried real surgical risk, but leaving that blockage untreated carried a certainty of eventual catastrophic stroke. She recovered completely. She did not have that stroke. She is home, independent, and fully herself. Because one physician checked both arms. Here is what I am asking you to do the moment this video ends. Place your cuff on your right arm. Record the reading. Move it to your left arm. Record that reading. Compare the two numbers. A difference greater than 10 points. Contact your physician tomorrow morning without fail. Greater than 15 points. Call today. Greater than 20 points. Go to the emergency room directly. Do not observe this. Do not monitor it over the coming weeks. Act on it now. This is the check that costs nothing, requires no prescription, and takes less time than brewing your morning coffee. And it is the one that for far too many people has never once been done. Your blood pressure is not a single number. It never was. It is a multi-layered biological report, one your body compiles and transmits at every reading, every morning, every appointment. The information has always been there. What's been missing is the knowledge to read it. So let's bring all 6 warnings together. Warning 1. Pulse pressure exceeding 70 points, top number minus bottom number signals arterial stiffness severe enough to place you at serious stroke risk. Your arteries have lost their elasticity, and every heartbeat is paying the price. Warning 2. A diastolic reading consistently below 60 means your coronary arteries are not receiving adequate blood flow during the heart's resting phase. Your heart is quietly starving, without pain, without complaint, until it can't anymore. Warning 3. Blood pressure that was controlled for years and suddenly becomes unmanageable is not a medication problem. It is a distress signal. Your kidneys, your adrenal glands, or your airway during sleep may be driving a crisis that no prescription can resolve until the underlying cause is identified. Warning 4. Blood pressure that fails to decline during sleep or rises at night suggests your body is under metabolic siege. Hidden nocturnal diabetes is among the most common and most consistently overlooked causes. Standard daytime screening will miss it entirely. Warning 5. Violent day-to-day pressure swings are not a monitoring inconvenience. They are evidence of ongoing microvascular damage to your brain's silent strokes accumulating in tissue that will never regenerate. Variability is, in many studies, a stronger predictor of dementia than average pressure level. Warning 6. A meaningful difference between your arms is systemic vascular disease made visible. It demands same-day attention, not a note in next month's chart. These 6 warnings exist in readings you can take yourself, at home, for free, but only if you know what to measure and what to ask. Your action plan starts today. Invest in a quality upper arm blood pressure monitor, not a wrist device. Check both arms every week and log both readings. Calculate your pulse pressure at every reading. If your diastolic consistently falls below 60, that conversation with your physician cannot wait. Track your readings over time and look honestly at the pattern, not just today's number, but the range across 2 weeks. If you wake repeatedly at night, feel inexplicably exhausted in the mornings, or have noticed subtle memory changes, request 2 4-hour ambulatory monitoring. Push for it if necessary. And when you sit down with your doctor, bring your log. Place it on the table. Ask the questions that your records raise. Why is my pulse pressure this wide? Why is my diastolic dropping? Have both arms been checked? These are not difficult questions. They are the right ones. And in 20 years of cardiology, I have watched those questions asked at the right moment change outcomes that might otherwise have been devastating. Your blood pressure has been speaking all along. The only thing that needed to change was whether anyone was truly listening. I want to leave you with one final story, because this one shows what becomes possible when someone finally reads the complete picture. Gerald was 79 years old when he came to me. 3 previous physicians, years of mounting frustration, a blood pressure log that looked, frankly, like a seismograph during an earthquake. I sat with his records and worked through every warning systematically. Pulse pressure of 84. Diastolic hovering at 57. Day-to-day variability spanning more than 35 points. And when I asked whether both arms had ever been measured simultaneously, silence. I checked them that afternoon. Left arm, 136/54. Right arm, 187/96. A difference of 51 points. Gerald had 4 concurrent warnings, each one serious in isolation, collectively representing a cardiovascular system in active crisis. Comprehensive imaging confirmed severe renal artery narrowing, significant carotid blockage, a calcified aorta, and underlying autonomic dysfunction driving the wild pressure swings. He was, without overstating it, weeks or months from a catastrophic event, but we caught it. Arterial procedures were performed. Medications were carefully recalibrated. His autonomic dysfunction was identified and treated. Within 4 months, his readings had stabilized in ways his previous physicians had never achieved, because they had never looked beyond the surface number. Gerald is doing well. 3 years later, his kidneys are intact, his cognition is sharp, and he is living independently in the home he's occupied for 4 decades. He didn't get lucky. He got answers because someone finally treated his blood pressure as a diagnostic instrument rather than an inconvenient number to suppress. That is what I want for you. Your readings contain information your body has been trying to communicate for years. Track them carefully. Measure both arms. Calculate the gap. Notice the patterns. And walk into your next appointment prepared to ask the questions that your data is already raising. Your blood pressure is transmitting. Make certain someone starting with you is receiving. I'm Dr. Alex Thompson. Thank you for investing this time in your own health. I'll see you in the next one.